Welcome to Thriller Recaps. Today, I am explaining the movie Rebel Moon, explaining every scene as it happens. Watch till the end, and please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy this. The movie begins by letting us know that on the Mother World, 1,000 kings ruled unchallenged in succession. But in their royal lust for power, they consumed their planet. The realm marched its army into the vastness of space, conquering everything in its path. The glory of the Mother World seemed without end until the treachery of an assassin's blade struck down the king and queen, severing the royal blood forever. The chaotic aftermath of the king's death led to several conquered planets on the edge of the Mother World's reach whispering of revolution. A senator named Belisarius used the opportunity to seize power, declaring himself regent. As a show of strength, he sent his most brutal commander into the outer regions of the Mother World's dominion to find and crush, without mercy, those who would call themselves rebels. The scene changes to the edge of the far moon. A woman, Kora, uses a horse to till the ground. She goes down and digs out a plant before sniffing the sand. A man finds her and begins to call out her name. He later runs to her after realizing she isn't answering him, as she seems lost in thought. He tells her Den was asking for her, as he and his brother brought a snow elk, and he wanted her to see it before he dressed it. She doesn't seem too interested in Den nor his brothers and continues tilling the soil. She finally leaves for the longhouse where the villagers are having a party. While eating, she comments that it's been a while since they've been able to eat fresh meat the snow elk Den had slain, and she's forgotten how good it is. Her father tells her Den was asking for her. She tells him she heard about it, and he's quite impressive. Her father asks if she's referring to the animal, or Den. She doesn't reply, and suddenly a horn blasts. The head of the villagers addresses his people. He tells them to make love that night for the harvest, the food they eat, and the gods. The whole town is merry as their head leaves with his bride. Kora, however, doesn't seem too interested in the party. The scene shifts to after the party. Kora's father tells her that Den is a good man as she walks into the room. He continues, saying he's the best hunter among them and a loyal friend. He asks her if she's thought of a more permanent relationship. She tells him it's easy between them and asks if it has to be more than that. He tells her that'll be her final step to becoming a full member of the community, as it's their home now. She replies, saying the 2 seasons she's spent in the village have given her the happiness she doesn't deserve. She tells him to understand that she's a child of war, and she doesn't know if she's capable of love or being loved, as the idea of love and family was beaten out of her. She was taught that love is weakness, and she doesn't know how that would change. The following day, while planting seeds with other women, Kora is asked why she left the harvest early the previous night. Suddenly, a dreadnought rumbles over their heads. Kora immediately runs into the village to alert everyone. The chief sees the warship and asks Kora what she thinks they want, to which she replies, "Everything." The villagers gather at the village meeting place to decide what to do about the warship hovering over their land. Gunnar suggests they welcome the ship and become partners with them. Kora immediately objects, and lets him understand that the ship's there for war and enslavement, not for prosperity. She suggests they should give them what they asked for, but no one should mention how fertile their land is, in hopes that they'd leave before digging too deep into who Gunnar sold the previous year's grains to. The village head interrupts and says they would volunteer nothing. Just then, a young boy runs in shouting, "They're coming!" The warships land in the village as the villagers wait outside. Sindri, the village chief, welcomes them and introduces himself. The visitors also introduce themselves. Their leader, Admiral Atticus Noble, embraces Sindri, who seems confused. After their weirdly long embrace, Noble asks about the village. Sindri tells him to follow him to their longhouse where he'll tell him about life in the village. As they walk towards the longhouse, Sinbal begins to tell Noble about the village. Noble tries to indulge Sindri in politics, but Sindri lets him know that they're not really concerned about the politics of the Mother World as they're just farmers. Noble tells him they'd be able to serve. He continues, telling Sindri that they're looking for rebels who have been attacking their supply ports. He says the rebels are Devra Bloodaxe and her brother Darian. Their capture is inevitable but is taking longer than expected. He tells them he's thinking of a partnership where Sindri and the villagers supply them with food, and in exchange, they're paid triple the market value. With the money, they'd be able to get machines and not do the work by hand. Sindri replies that they believe doing the work by hand connects them to the soil. Meanwhile, Gunnar seems very interested in this offer and is seen making notable gestures. Sindri continues. He tells Noble that the land is rocky and barely yields enough for them. He then declines Noble's offer. Noble doesn't believe him and says the land looks fertile and seems to produce just more than enough to feed the entire village. Sindri tries to convince him and tells Noble to share a cup of ale with him. Noble then asks the entire village for the person who oversees the harvest. Gunnar tells him he's in charge of the harvest. Noble then asks for the truth about the village soil. Gunnar tells him they can spare a little, thus discarding their plan not to tell the strangers how fertile their land is. Noble tells them he's confused as Sindri had tried to convince him that their land produces barely enough to feed them all. He asks who Gunnar is, but Sindri says he's a nobody and Sindri, has been tasked with the role of speaking for his people and it'll be best to ignore Gunnar. Noble tells them he wants to show how those in power deal with those without power. He picks up a rifle but drops it. He moves closer to Gunnar and, like lightning, punches Sindri in his face before using the rifle to hit him repeatedly in the presence of the villagers. In pain, his wife rushes to her dead husband but she's killed too. The entire village begins to sob. Noble promises to return in 10 weeks to get his harvest. He demands for 10,000 bushels. Gunnar lets him know that they barely produce 12,000 bushels and if they surrender 10,000 bushels, the villagers would starve to death. Noble and his entourage leave but he leaves some of his men and a robot behind. The men evict some of the villagers from their homes. One of the men, Marcus, bullies the robot after realizing it won't fight back as they've stopped fighting after the king was killed. He keeps shooting at the robot until he's stopped by their commander. The robot is told to wash itself in the river. It complies. As it finishes washing up, he's offered a towel by Sam. The robot tells her she reminds him of their slain king's daughter, Princess Issa. In myth, she was called the Redeemer. He continues telling her the story of the slain king who was killed by the people he trusted most. Sam wears him a flower hat which she'd crafted before leaving. The villagers at the longhouse begin to blame Gunnar for the death of their leader. They all later agree that they'd continue to farm to stay alive as they can farm but Noble and his men can't. Kora thinks it's a stupid idea but doesn't say anything. Instead, she goes home and begins to pack her things. Her father comes into the room to see her packing. He feels very disappointed and asks her if she's not had enough of running already. She tells him the villagers are delusional as they think the soldiers would show them mercy after what they did to Sindri in their presence. Her father tells her that when he found her in the ship, he wanted to leave her, as he thought she would bring trouble to them. He tells her he doesn't regret bringing her to the village, but feels disappointed that she is willing to leave when the village needs her. He stops her from leaving and tries to convince her that they could fight. She refuses, and he lets her leave. She's about to leave when she hears Sam's cry for help. She goes out to see Sam lifted on the ground by Marcus and 2 other men. Private Eris tries to stop Marcus and his men, but it results in a fight where Eris is injured. Kora walks in to stop the men from hurting her friend. Using an axe she's gotten from the barn, she injures most of the soldiers. The commander points a gun to Sam's head and promises to kill her if Kora attacks him. Just then, the robot Sam had talked with earlier walks in. The commander commands it to kill Kora. Seeing its friend in trouble, it shoots the commander instead before running out. The villagers gather at the scene shocked to see all the soldiers dead. Kora tells them they would need to fight. Her father gives her a gun which he had found the day he found her. She tells him she's going to meet Titus, a hero of the realm who turned his men against the forces of the mother world. Her father, impressed with her, bids her farewell as she begins her journey with Gunnar. They begin their journey, and at night they camp. Gunnar asks her if she was a soldier for the mother world. She confirms it but she's wanted for desertion. Gunnar then asks how she knew Noble and his men would destroy them as they aren't even threats. She tells him she was 9 years old when they first came to her world. They didn't ask for anything, all they wanted was to destroy them. The mother world forces were commanded by Belisarius. A flashback of the younger version of Kora begins. Her people had mounted a defense but that only angered Belisarius. She meets Belisarius. He drops his gun when he sees her. He spared her life but killed her entire family. He trained her in the ways of the mother world, and for 5 years she lived on the ship with the soldiers who had now become like her family. He took her on missions, and she became like his child. She grew up to be the daughter of a decorated commander, a friend to the king and the royal family. She was tasked to defend the mother world and even had a lover who died in battle. At the age of 18, she was made an officer and given a command. The scene returns to present day. Gunnar listens to Kora's story in shock, and she tells him she knows they would destroy the village because that's the same thing she would do. The next day, the duo moves to the port city of Providence in Velit. They find Hackshaw's bounty hunters tormenting a man. Immediately, Gunnar realizes the man being tormented is the man they traveled down to see, the one who gave him the contact of the Blood Axes. Kora asks if the Blood Axes gave him another way to contact them. He replies that they told him they were sheltered on a planet called Charon protected by a king named Levitaka. They walk into a bar where Gunnar is sexually molested by a pig-like creature. It results in a fight where Kora is able to inflict injuries on the creature. The creature leaves, and Kora says loudly that she's seeking General Titus. An alien/human possessed being tells them the last time he heard of him, he was fighting in the Colosseum in Pollux, and warns her to be careful as the general doesn't seem to like to be disturbed. She is about to leave when Gunnar asks if that's her plan, to just go to Pollux and find the general. She replies that it is. He then suggests they find a ship that'll take them to Pollux. Just then, the pig-like creature walks in with 2 other men. She warns him to go away, but he doesn't listen. Another man from the back points a gun at her also. Infuriated, she begins shooting at everyone. She is able to unalive them all. After the shootout, she meets Kai, who offers to take them to Pollux since they need a ship, and he has it. They agree to follow him, and the trio begins their journey to Pollux. Their ship stops at Frontier Homestead where they meet a man, Tarak, who they tell that they're looking for a force to hire and train that'll protect them from the Mother World. He tells them he would gladly fight with them, but he has a debt on his name. It's a huge amount, and Kora doesn't seem to have the money. Tarak's owner, Kickman, then gambles. He tells them that if Tarak could ride the creature in his yard, he would let him go, but if he fails, he would take Kora and Gunnar hostage too. Luckily, he is able to pacify the creature. He talks to the creature, telling it that they're not so different. The creature listens to him and allows him to ride it. Impressed, Kickman clears Tarak's debt as promised, and he decides to try his luck and ride the creature too, only to get assaulted by the creature and killed. Tarak and his newly found team begin their journey. They move to the cobalt mining planet where they meet a woman, Nemesis, on behalf of the village. They seek her help to join forces with them and fight against the Motherworld. Nemesis walks into a room where a Hermanda, a spider/human-like creature, had weaved its nest. The Hermanda had taken someone's child. The whole town watches as Nemesis tries to get the child back, but the Hermanda refuses to give it to her, claiming she's trying to seek revenge. The Hermanda alleges that the people had come to disrupt her peace and have made her eggs weak so she can't breed any more children. Soon, it results in a fight which Nemesis wins. The child is returned to her mother. She agrees to join them on their quest, and the journey continues. On the ship, Kora praises Gunnar's bravery in saving the child from earlier. She continues the story of her past life and how she became the Royal Elite Guard due to her victories at war. She became the bodyguard to Princess Issa, who's believed to have the power to give life. They move to the gladiator area of Castor on the moon of Pollux where they find General Titus, who's drunk and has bird waste all over him. They clean him up, and Kora tries to motivate him, knowing he's given up on war. She convinces him, and he agrees to join them on their quest as he sees it as a way to avenge the death of his dead soldiers. Meanwhile, the Hackshaws team up with Noble and his men on their quest to find Blood Axe. They discover Blood Axes in Chiron, and they prepare to go there. Kora and her team move to the home planet of King Levetica. They're welcomed by King Levetica, who tells them Devra is aware of their presence, and she can decide if she wants to meet them. Kora tells him she'll wait for her. Soon, Devra and her brother, Darian, join them. Kora tells the siblings of their quest, but they refuse to help them. Kora then blackmails them, reminding them of the food Gunnar had given to them and their armies when they needed it. Darian finally agrees to help them. He takes some of his soldiers who are ready to fight with him and commands Devra to leave Chiron as Noble would be coming for them soon. Kai also proposes to help them. Noble arrives on planet Chiron and destroys it for taking in the Blood Axes even after knowing that they're the enemies of the Mother World. He also unalives King Levetica. The Hackshaws also send a message that they're closing in on the Blood Axes. Kora and her team land at an unregistered trade depot where Kai goes to deliver some goods, but Kora realizes something isn't right when she sees Kai speaking with some Hackshaws. Soon, their ships are blown up, and the whole team is taken hostage except Kai. Kora immediately realizes they've been betrayed. Soon, Noble and his men arrive at the scene. Noble walks to each of them impressed as he believes he'll become the hero of the realm once he submits their bodies to the regent. One by one, he mentions their names and their various feats. Gunnar is then given a gun with the intention to paralyze Kora and the rest of the team, but he refuses to and instead frees her and injures Kai. A fight ensues, and Gunnar frees the rest of his team. The fight continues for a long time, and most of Darian's soldiers die as the King's Gaze destroys all their ships. Angrily, Darian goes closer to the King's Gaze and unalives the man motoring it before giving up the ghost too. The King's Gaze blows up, destroying a huge part of the port. Noble survives but comes in contact with Kora. The duo fight for a while until Kora overpowers him and throws his body into the fire burning underneath. One of Darian's soldiers, Tarak, and the rest of Kora's team survive. Titus tells them that what they've done is the beginning of something while Nemesis wonders what the Mother World would do. Kora assures them that the Mother World can't do anything for the meantime. They all decide to go to Velt to get their payments. Close to Velt, Titus asks if Kora is really Arthelis. She replies that Kai was a liar and a thief who almost sold them off for a profit. The heroes then ride into Velt on Urakis. Meanwhile, Noble's body is found and taken back to the Mother World as he's prepared for transmission. His body is dunked in a special liquid and then sent into the other world where he meets Belisarius. He tells him he's found Kora, but Belisarius doesn't seem too impressed. He tells Noble to crush the insurgency to the last man and bring back Kora, his precious child, so he may crucify her in the shadow of the Senate. He warns he's going to crucify Noble if he doesn't bring Kora to him before sending him back into the world. Noble wakes up screaming. Subscribe for more daily videos. Your support, likes, shares, and subscriptions mean a lot. See you in the next video.